Turns, where we share stories of metaphysics, alchemy, healing, and awakening. With your host, internationally known as the Soul's Shaman, Miss Johanna Burkhardt. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And of course, interact if you're live. Hello, my loves, and welcome to episode 4 of As the Soul Turns. Today, I am going to be sharing my experience with the plant medicine ayahuasca. And we're going to refer to it as Aya today, just to make sure that we don't have any issues with getting muted or anything like that. Since we are recording this live. So I wanted to dive in and talk about this plant medicine and my experience with it. And if you've had a different experience with it, that's awesome. And that's one of the things I'm going to talk about today is how different our experiences are on this medicine with any plant medicine, right? Everybody's going to have a different experience. Every time you do it, it's going to be a different experience. So what I share, what I experience, doesn't necessarily mean that that is what will happen if you choose this medicine, if this medicine chooses you, because that's really how it happens. It's a calling. It's something that shows up in your life and just gets louder and louder for you to experience until you decide to dive in and face the fear, because there is a lot of fear around this medicine. There's a lot of fear around this medicine, and it is medicine. If you look back through history, through mythology, through all of the textbooks, you will see photos, you will see ceremonies, you will see the healing that happened that's always been used with this medicine. It wasn't until someone decided to capitalize on nature and create something that is genetic, is synthetic, and really move using petroleum and creating prescriptions, because they can't capitalize on nature. They can't capitalize on natural medicine. They need us to be sick. And that's really important for people to hear. Prescriptions are a Band-Aid. They're a temporary fix for you to get your shit together, just to be blunt, to change your lifestyle, to change your diet, to change your emotional and mental state. Because, disease comes from dis-ease in the body. It comes from disharmony, from things not being in coherence, mind, body, spirit. And that's where the root of all disease comes from. It's all energy first. And it's very important to acknowledge that. So about 4 months ago, I started microdosing Aya. It just showed up one day for me, and I found a place that I utilize to get my microdose. The microdose is not psychoactive, so I'm going to start there. It is not psychoactive. The microdose is the vine only. It's called BCAPI. And you do want to make sure that if you ever choose to microdose this, that you pick a source that is recommended by somebody who's utilized it, who has a sacred connection to the plant, who knows what they're doing, right? It's just not something you just want to grab from anywhere and take. That's not really how that works. And so I did some research, and I found a place that I was a resonant match to, that I was drawn to. And it's just this little tiny bottle. And I started taking about 4 drops in the morning. And now I'm up to, actually, I just restarted microdosing today. I'm up to about 8 drops underneath my tongue every day. And the purpose of Aya is to really open your heart. It's to open your heart very wide. Because what it's also going to do when you go into ceremony is it's going to open up your unconscious basement. It's going to open up the things that you have repressed so deep inside of you. And it's going to allow it to rise up and give you an opportunity to accept and integrate it and to make peace with it. And I went into the ceremony having zero expectations, zero expectations. I had no idea what I was in for. I didn't Google anything. I didn't look into it. I didn't talk to other people who had experienced it because I didn't want to be influenced. And going into ceremony, the 2 to 3 weeks leading up to it, it has an extremely strict diet. You can't have garlic, you can't have onion, you can't have anything processed, which you guys know I already rarely eat anything processed anyway. It's a very high fruit diet. As I have shared many times, a high fruit diet is super healing. It's how you heal your adrenals. It is the most high frequency food that there is fruit. Good quality fruit, of course. So it's more of a high fruit diet, no alcohol, no other drugs, no prescriptions. You have to just remove everything from your life. It's very important because we don't want anything interfering with the medicine, because when you go into ceremony, it is psychoactive. Okay. There's DMT in it. And DMT is something that we can experience naturally as well. So just know that all of what I'm saying can be achieved without plant medicine, through doing the work, through learning to sit with yourself, through breath work, through awareness and mindfulness. It is possible, because actually all of what I experienced is stuff that I've already channeled. It's stuff I've been channeling for years. And that was probably the coolest part of the whole thing. Was it's one thing to channel it, right? It's just like if you go to school or you read a book or you take a course, right? Learning the information, receiving the information, however it comes, is one thing. It's just knowledge. But knowledge is useless unless it's put into play, unless you've actually had to experience it. And once you've experienced it, it becomes wisdom because you actually lived it. You real-lifed it. You walked through it. So the things that I'm about to discuss are things that I physically, tangibly experienced in this ceremony. And it's stuff that I've been channeling for quite some time. So to prepare for the ceremony, there's a lot of stuff that you have an option to do. You can do mambe, which is actually the cocaine plant. But cocaine is just derived from and cut and mixed with all kinds of terrible things. This is the whole plant. And you can do hape. There was another thing that they were offering. The hape is it's a nicotine plant. It's a tobacco plant, I should say, not nicotine. It's a tobacco plant. And I have done hape before. I did it before I did my combo ceremony with Ashley. And I did not like hape the first time I did it. It was a terrible experience. But I was going to pass this time, right? Because again, when you go into a ceremony, it's an offering. If you choose not to do it, that's your choice. Nobody's forcing you to do anything. But I felt the call. I was like, you know what? I'm here. I'm doing it. I might as well go full in and just do the full experience. So I did the hape this time. And of course, it's very clearing of the pineal gland and the frontal lobe. And so when they blow, basically you take a deep breath in and they blow it into your nostrils one at a time, because they have to do the feminine and the masculine. And it goes straight up into your head. And you're literally like, oh my God, like the pain is very temporary, but it's real. And it settles down, right? Grace through suffering. The more you resist the pain, the more it hurts. So when you relax into the pain, it doesn't hurt as much. And so I also feel that sometimes doing plant medicine is a way for people to learn to let go. It's a way for people to learn to make friends with their pain, to lean into their pain. Because again, when you resist it, it's like a dam. You're basically holding it away, but you're really not, right? It's staying the same. You're just staying stuck in the pain. So we learn physically and tangibly that when we resist the pain, we get stuck in it, right? We actually feel it longer. We feel it more intently. And this works with emotions, mindset, all of it, right? But the plant medicine gives you a real tangible experience of what you're doing. But once the pain had settled, I felt super connected to my body. I felt very grounded. I felt very present. My heart was already beginning to open. I was feeling very, I was feeling very centered, very centered. And then we begin the ceremony. So I'm not going to go into all the nitty gritty details because I don't have a lot of time today, and I don't like these to be super long. You can take up to 4 cups. They recommend you take 3 cups. The ceremonies can last anywhere from 8 hours to like 12 or 14 hours. And the ceremonies are held at night. And there's a reason for that, right? There's more stillness at night. There's not as much energy in the collective. The facilitator said that the veil is thinner. I don't believe we even have a veil anymore. From what I've channeled and from what I experienced, we do not have a veil anymore. So, but what I can say is at night, it's more peaceful. The energy is more peaceful, and that's important for the ceremony. So we started the ceremony about 8:30 at night, and you have to stay awake. You have to stay awake all night. It's very important to stay awake through the ceremony. If you fall asleep, they often say grandmother ayahuasca will walk past you. Like, you won't have the healing experience that you came to have. And if you're going to do a medicine like this, you might as well be very present and be in the ceremony, be in it. So I took the first cup. You can't touch anybody else. There was about 12. I think there's like 12 people in the ceremony. So I had someone right on both sides of me and in front of me. So there's people all around me. That was the only thing I did not like about this ceremony, was how close in proximity I was to other people. I think that we should have a little bit more space, allow a little bit more space for our auric field. But nevertheless, that was where I was. So I took the first cup, and it took about, they tell you it's going to invoke purging, right? It's going to make you throw up. It's going to make it sometimes come out both ends. It's meant to remove the toxins, the toxic energy, anything that's actually toxic in your body. There has been many documented experiences, including the facilitator's wife, who had healed like 7 autoimmune diseases, from like fibro to gut imbalances to all. I can't even remember. There's so many that she had. She healed all of them because, again, physical dis-ease in the body is from an energetic dis-ease or disharmony. It can be healed. And her, like me, had experienced a lot of trauma. So she had healed a lot of her trauma. And she, again, just like me, had physical, mental, emotional, and sexual abuse in her childhood and young adulthood. And that's what really drew me in. And it's very important, before I go into my experience, it's very important to mention these things. You need to trust your facilitator. So you have to learn to really trust yourself and your intuition to find the person that is going to do the right thing, who's going to create a safe space, put safety over everything else, who's going to be very honest with you and educating you on what's about to happen and what you may experience, and how to really get through it. And so you got to do your research. You got to take recommendations. You do not want to just choose anybody and jump into this. He educated us on the Shaman Lineage because there is a lineage of shamans that precede him, that he is, and for lack of a better term, a hierarchy, right? So he talked about the lineage of the shamans where this medicine came from. I believe it was originated in Colombia. And the grand shaman, the very top shaman, was actually a female, which was very awesome because this felt like we were going to be doing some deep ancestral healing. So you really want to be educated. You don't want to just pick anybody, and you really want to know and feel inside of you. You want to feel connected and trusting of the person that you're choosing to go into ceremony and have facilitate this. Because once you start, there's no going back. There's nothing you can take. It's not like mushrooms. When you take psilocybin, you can drink sugary drinks. You can drink like a diet, it's the saccharin. So you can drink like a Diet Coke, and it will help speed it through your system faster so that you're not, I don't know if anybody saw that behind me. So that it moves through your system faster. There is nothing you can do with ayahuasca. You have to write it out. You have to go through it. you're literally, once you start, you're in it until it passes through your system. So I took my first cup, and it took about a half hour. They will tell you, try not to puke for the first hour, because you want the medicine to cycle through your system. It's going to do a full cycle. So if anybody's ever done psilocybin, it kind of works in the same way, where you go through these waves because it's cycling through, right? You have a whole electric circulatory system in your body, right? Your lymphatic system, your nervous system, your circulatory system. It's like you're wiring, your plumbing. It's going to cycle through all of that, and it's kind of clearing out the gunk, and it's getting into the depths of your unconscious. I mean, depths of your unconscious. So the first cup I took was a great experience. It was awesome. If you've ever seen a kaleidoscope, everything you see, in my experience, was like that. You truly see the multidimensionality of where we are. You truly begin to see that this is not real. And I know a lot of people may have a hard time with what I'm about to say, and that's okay, because let me tell you, it's our brain, our human ego is a very limited creature. It does not understand, and sometimes too much truth and too much knowledge can literally break your mind, because it can't understand, it can't fathom what it's seeing. And because it can't understand it, because it's so limited, it can really wreak havoc on you. It can. This is something that can happen. So I understand if people are like, I don't believe that, or I have a hard time with that. That's okay. I'm not here to convince you. This is my experience. So I got to see very tangibly that this is not real. This human experience is not real. It literally is a matrix. It literally is a creation. And the only thing that is actually real is what you get out of the experience. So you are here at the very core. We are here as humans to experience energy physically, tangibly, to have a physical experience. That's it. That is it. There's no big lesson. There's no big anything. This is a grand experiment. It is all an illusion. And it all is we had to partition ourselves off to have this physical experience, to have something that feels this real. Because this is the planet of feeling. And we came to feel into the depths, which is ironic, right? Because the very thing that we hate doing is feeling. So next time you're feeling, remember that you came here to feel everything, the good, what you perceive to be bad, all of it. You came here to feel. So the only thing that is actually real, and the only thing that actually matters, is what you get out of whatever you experience. So if you want to spend your whole life, if your experience you want to have is to work a 9 to 5 and to come home and live your life in a comfortable cycle of boringness, or whatever it is for you, comfort, your experience here is going to be very limited. But you are limitless, and you can choose to experience whatever you want. And the more you experience, the more you step out of your comfort zone, the more you decide to do the thing that you want to do, to take the risk, to listen to your heart, to listen to your soul, the more you're going to get out of this experience. And I can't say that enough. Literally, none of what we do here actually matters, except for what you get out of this experience. None of it matters. I know it's a really hard concept to grasp. And I've talked about this in different ways, but to experience it, I could never forget it. It is like, oh, I get chills just thinking about it. It is in my cells. It is in me now. I know. And what that showed me and gave me, the gift that it gave me, was to appreciate being physical, to appreciate being human, even when the shit is tough. Because right now my life is in a shitstorm, and I have no problem admitting that, because I'm a student first forever, and we're always evolving and growing. And sometimes things have to be broken apart because you're expanding, and it has to be rebuilt, because your new container, your new structure has to be rebuilt. You got to be able to hold more. So you got to bust out, right? Think of animals that bust out of their shell, right? Like a hermit crab, right? They grow out of their shell and they have to grow a new one. So it's the same for us. Sometimes our life has to be broken. Our structures have to be broken because we're in a great expansion and we have to create this new structure to hold more energy, right? Because what you're always manifesting constantly, there's never a time you're not manifesting. The only thing that you're going to manifest and sustain, right? If you want more money, if you want to sustain more money on a constant basis, if you want to sustain that good relationship, that career, that business, whatever, you have to be able to sustain that frequency in you. Otherwise, everything will be temporary. I painfully know this, not just from ayahuasca, but from my life. So I started to see the multidimensionality of everything and how it only becomes physical because of the focus and the attention that we bring to it. And a great example of this is if you've ever been driving on a highway and ahead of you, you see the road look watery and like it's like not there, it's moving. That's how everything actually is. Everything is in constant motion. Everything is fluid. But it is our focus that makes it solid and our presence with it that makes it solid. And the more you awaken or become aware on this journey, that actually becomes the way that you see. So when you really start to embody the quantum energy, 5D and above, if we want to give it a label, that's how you'll see. And I actually see that way a lot of the time. I see things as fluid. I see them as moving more. And that's just a level, right? But I got to see it at a whole nother level and experience it at a whole nother level when I was in the ceremony. So I started to see that, and I did attempt to purge a little. I'm not someone who really throws up very easily. It's not something, even in other ceremonies, it's just, I had a lot of energetic release and a lot of yawning. So as a transmuter, I yawn a lot, or I'll belch, or I'll cough. Those are my ways of releasing energy. And what I noticed is with the first cup, I was yawning like so much that my jaw was hurting because I was constantly opening my jaw and just releasing this energy after energy after energy. And then I had the coolest experience ever. So have you ever heard the term, I am you, you are me? Hearing that, channeling that we are all one, that everyone you meet is you, but isn't you, that everything is alive, the chair, the desk, the computer, my cup, everything, my shirt, everything is alive, everything is energy. I've channeled that many times. I got to experience it. There isn't one being in the sky. There isn't a place that you go. I'm sure you could create a place if that's your belief. It literally is, and the only way to describe it is this field of oneness. It's just a one consciousness. And I've channeled this. I've heard people talk about it from their NDEs, near-death experiences. But to experience it was wild, like wild, you guys, like so mind-blowingly wild. And what happened is like a kaleidoscope, I began to merge into the oneness. And as I entered into the oneness, there was no separation between me and anybody else. There was no separation between me and the oneness, like zero separation. But at the same time, I still could identify my beliefs, if you will, my understanding. I could still identify me, but I knew there was no separation between me and anybody else and anything else. And so I would merge into the oneness and I would merge back out. And all I can tell you is it was like a kaleidoscope. I just blended right in, right? I just blended right into the oneness. And it was very clear. They made it very clear. There is no, people talk about God, or there's different gods. Those are just beings, right? Those are beings that have ascended, that we have given importance to, that have literally become enlightened. They have become full crystalline beings. And it is okay for you to worship them, or to believe in them, or to look up to them. They have great teachings. But there is no one God. There just isn't. It's just a field of oneness. And there was this oneness, basically thought the word I and fragmented into infinite aspects to experience itself. It realized it could experience itself. And so I was going in and out of this oneness. And then all of a sudden, the whole room started to go in and out of the oneness. And everything started going in and out of the oneness. And I realized that this shirt is the oneness experiencing itself as a shirt. This desk is the oneness experiencing itself as a desk. This is me. I'm part of the oneness experiencing myself as Johanna. Everything from the trees to the grass to an ant to a tarantula, because those have been showing up for me, to a light bulb, everything is oneness experiencing itself, because through that experience, it learns, it evolves, and we bring it back into the oneness, and the whole evolves. So for me, for you, for us. So literally every person you meet is you, but also isn't you, because it's both, right? We're in a dualistic plane. So it's you. It's mirroring back something of you. It's a resonant match to you. Again, why I always say energy protection is just a form of resistance, and it's not something should be practiced, because you'll never attract anything that you are not a resonant match for, ever. What that resonant match is trying to teach you is for you to learn through experience. And you'll bring that back. And I also got to experience karma. And it is the way that I channeled it. It's this pool where the things that we didn't finish, things that we started with other people, things that we started, or lessons that we didn't finish, we didn't complete, it kind of gets dumped into this pool. And we return to the oneness, and we can go back and take on a scoop of it and choose what we want to try again, right? Because we want to look at it again from another perception. We want to experience it a different way. This is why sometimes you have multiple lives where you'll remember that you were the daughter and then you came back and you were the mother. Why? Because there was something unfinished and you wanted to look at it from a different angle, from a different lens of perception. Right. And it's really interesting that I had this experience right before I started Soulvation, which is exactly what this was about, right? Learning to embody through different lenses of perception, through different aspects of you. So I got to see that. And what they showed is what most people think is everyday karma in this life, right? You reap what you sow, is really just the law of cause and effect. Whatever you do, whatever action you take, whatever thing you speak, the beliefs you carry, the emotions you express or don't express, everything has an effect. Whatever you do is going to unlock a chain of events. And you have to go through it, because if you don't, you're just going to call it in multiple ways. You have to finish it. You have to move through the experience. Otherwise, you just stay in these cycles. And when you don't have understanding, which opens up, when you don't let it in, you can't understand it. You can't have compassion for it. Therefore, you can't accept it, which is what integration really is about, the beginning of integration. So I was sitting there having this experience of oneness and seeing how everything, the multidimensionality of everything and everyone around me, and understanding that literally everything is just the oneness experiencing itself to evolve. And that the only thing, again, that is real in this experience, the only thing that really matters is what you get out of it. It reaffirmed more than ever that not being afraid to do something, like I can't have fear. I have a whole new understanding of fear. And it's literally the human ego, the limited human ego that does not understand, that can't conceptualize. It's a very primitive part of us. But the soul, when you allow the soul to drive, it wants to take these big risks. It wants to take these leaps that don't make sense. It wants to do the things. It wants to learn the things. It wants to try the things, because that's what it's freaking here for. It wanted to have an experience because it only learns through experience. It has to be put into action. So as it'll start to fade, right? So cup 1 is starting to kind of cycle down and it's not so strong. And they call out for people to come up and to take their second cup. And I'm standing there. I feel on top of the world. I just experienced the oneness. My heart is freaking wide open, like I've never experienced it ever before, like wide open. I loved everyone, everything. All I could feel was love. I could, like, unconditional love. I was lighthearted and humorous. It was just the most epic experience. I had to experience the oneness first because of what was about to happen next. Ooh, let me take a drink. This is still very raw for me. And I've really only shared it with one person, and it was because she had plant medicine experience before, so she could understand. Because having this conversation with someone who hasn't taken the medicine is not the same. It's hard for them to understand because their ego gets in the way. So I go up. Facilitator David asks, "How you doing?" I'm like, I'm great. I'm great." Gives me a big cup. I take it. And I go back and I get in my spot. And you can't have dogs in the ceremony because dogs can take on entities. And, there's entities all around us, right? People were seeing reptilians, people were seeing, different beings, different alien races. Your awareness, it's not like you can still go to the bathroom, you can still walk, like you're just ridiculously aware. You're more aware than you've probably ever been in your life. So you see without filters. You see from the perspective of the soul. So about 45 minutes, hour into this experience, I started the purge again. This one, it really started to get super, super intense, really, really intense. Everything intensified. The bucket had no ending, right? So when I would go to throw up in the bucket just was, again, like the kind of kaleidoscope effect. It just went on forever. And I started to go into these cycles. And I started to become really oversensitized because I have really good energetic boundaries, but right at the time, the 2nd through the 4th, like right at the beginning of July, I told you guys in the energy update that we were going to be super sensitive. Like our sensitivity level was going to be at all-time high as we started to embody these higher frequencies that are now sustained. Like this is our new level of frequency. And so when that happens, it shatters whatever structure, whatever energetic boundaries you had, gone. And you can very easily take on other people's energy. You can very easily be oversensitized. And so it's very important to be present and aware so that you can be like, okay, I have to redo my boundaries. I have to solidify my structuring around me, where I end and someone else begins. Well, when you're in ceremony, you can't do that. You're not accessing that part of you, right? You're just in the full experience. So I started to go into these cycles, and these cycles were so deep, and it was a mind loop. And I would go into it, and I would go in, and I would be going deep into repression. And when I would get into when I would get down deep into the repression, I would feel angry, resentful, and powerless. When I tell you, I have never felt this level of powerlessness and rage in my life. I mean, I have never. It was the most intense, scary, uncomfortable thing I have ever experienced in my life. And it wasn't just mine. And when it first started, I knew this was mine. I knew it was my powerlessness. I could see aspects of myself. I could see things. I knew that I was going into the depths of my unconscious and accessing my rage, my powerlessness, my resentment, right? Think about doing 25 years of shadow work and taking layer by layer. This, you're excavating it. You're excavating 25 years of shit in a single ceremony. It's intense. But it was showing me the patterns that I get stuck in and the things that I was repeating in avoidance of experiencing my own powerlessness and my own rage. Because think about the abuse that I went through, right? I shared a little bit about it in my book, but when you are a baby, when you are, let's just say a child, baby, child, teenager, and you are being physically, mentally, emotionally, and sexually abused, it doesn't get more powerless than that. I couldn't scream. I couldn't tell anybody. There was nothing I could do because my life depended on keeping it under wraps. And so think about all of that, right? I was raped by a police officer in my early 30s. I was raped several times. I was abused as a child sexually. I was raped. I lost my virginity being raped as a teenager, and then I was roofied as an adult and by a police officer. I had pushed all of that down, all of it, because I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't feel safe to deal with it. And my childhood programming had told me that if we tell anybody, that if we do anything with this, you're going to die. Because literally that's what would have happened had the one time I told on just a side note, I told on my stepmother, who was my abuser in middle school. They saw my back was covered. Every inch of my back was bruised. Because somebody touched me and I flinched. And so that they immediately, back then, they took nothing. I mean, they took that shit seriously. They don't take that shit as seriously as they do today. But they wanted to call CPS. And in the beginning, I was going to let them. But by the end of the day, I told them, I said, if you do that, I'm going to die. She's going to kill me. And they believed me and let me, and they did not report it to anybody. That programming was deep in me. So I was constantly repressing my rage, my powerlessness into my unconscious basement. And that has affected me. That is the stream, the sustained stream that has manifested bad relationships, more abuse, more opportunities for me to be powerless. Because our mind will obsess, and we will constantly manifest what we aren't willing to face. So there's nothing more important than accepting, loving, and facing the darkest aspects of you. And why I've gone into this line of work to begin with, because I've known just through my own healing work this, but to experience it amplified like this, I will never forget it. It's changed my life forever. So I was going through that cycle. But then it started to get intensified. And I started to go into the collective cycle. Because here's the thing, right? I just experienced the oneness. I knew there was no separation between me and you, between me and everybody else. And I didn't want it. I did not want to purge for the collective. I did not want to clear. Oh, I didn't want to, because it was a lot. It was so much that I needed it to stop, because it was never ending. And we look at society and we see that we have repeated so many cycles. Racism in different forms, poverty in different forms, depressions in different forms, genocide in different forms, slavery in different forms. We just keep going through the same freaking cycles in the world over and over. We keep repeating these patterns. We just keep repeating them. And the whole point is we will continue to repeat these cycles of powerlessness and rage and anger and things not going our way and us being slaves to these cycles in the world until the day that the majority of the world chooses to stop fighting with each other and to see I am you and you are me, to see that we can have differing opinions, differing perspectives, and still love each other. When we choose to come together and say, it's okay that you're pro-choice and I'm not. The real issue here is letting somebody else dictate that choice for us. We should be free to make our choice. To see that what's happening isn't meant to be fought with. We're not meant to stand up and fight against each other. We're meant to come together, to work together, to find that common goal, to find that middle point. I talk about this with boundaries, right? For me, for you, for us. If I like chocolate ice cream and you like vanilla and you hate chocolate and I hate vanilla, that's not going to work for me and it's not going to work for you. If I give in to you, then I am abandoning me. If you give in to me, then you're abandoning yourself. But if we both like strawberry, that's for me, for you, for us. It works, right? We found the balance point. We found the middle ground. So seeing people on Facebook say, I'm going to unfriend you because of your belief systems, or I'm going to fight with you because of this or that, and fighting, you have to stop fighting. Because all it does, again, it's the fighting is coming from fear. The not wanting to hear another or to consider another's perspective is all from fear. It's all from the ego. And so we do this. I don't want to experience that. I don't want to have that. I don't want to feel that. I don't want that to happen in my life. That sucks. So again, when we do this, we resist. We're repressing that emotion. We're saying we don't want to feel this. And again, you're never holding it at bay. You're making it stay the same. So that energy just sits and cycles around you. And that's what I experienced. I would go into the cycle of repression and I would fight. My body wanted to fight it. My body wanted to resist it. And it got so intense. I started to fragment so much, meaning I started to see every aspect of myself. I started to see all the cracks and fragments in the world. And my mind was breaking. And the ego part of me was fighting tooth and nail because it didn't want to die. It wanted to stay in control. It wanted to fight this to the point to where I was spiraling, and my body was paralyzed except for my arms, and I was sitting Indian style, and I just started banging on my legs, and I had to use my words, and I just said, for the first time, this was a big deal because it was in front of like 15 other people because there was facilitators there. I commanded the room. Nobody else was really going through anything because I took center stage. And I started to flip out and I started to say, I'm really struggling here. I need help. I'm really struggling. I can't get out of the cycle. I can't make it stop. I can't make it stop. And so David would come over, and I think it's called Kapal. It's this smoke, right, that really kind of drops you. And he started to help me surrender. And I would surrender. I would surrender into it, right? Which means I would let it happen. I would let myself feel it. I would go into the powerlessness. I would go into the rage. I'll never forget that feeling because it was so much. But I would surrender into it. And then it would come back up again.
And I would have to go another layer deeper. And this went on for what felt like 10 hours. And I knew it was the collectives because part of my consciousness kept saying, me only, me only, me only. I didn't want to clear for the collective. I didn't want to clear for anybody else. It was too much. I was oversensitized. I was feeling everything. I was smelling everything. I was hearing everything. It was so much. To the point to where I just had to express it. I had to let the rage out. I had to let the powerlessness out. And I just started screaming. When I say screaming, I am surprised 5 houses down did not have the police at his door, because I was flipping out. I was screaming, make it stop. It's too much. It's too much. And he just sat there and he's like, you have to ride it out. And he just kept making me say, God is making everything perfect. God is making everything perfect. And every time I would go into the depths of the rage and collective powerlessness, my ego would start to fight it again. And then I would have to surrender. And I would have to lean into it and be taken over by this feeling and come back. And it would happen again and again and again. I just kept going deeper and deeper and deeper into this for the collective and for me, because I'm a part of that. The things I saw, the things I felt, the things I heard, I can't even articulate and tell you, nor would I want to, because I was clearing it. For hours, I commanded the room. And I can't even articulate to you the level of screaming and rage and powerlessness and begging. I was bargaining for my life. Please. Like, I was sobbing and screaming and begging for my life. This part of me did not want to die. It did not want to go home. It did not want to go into my heart. It wanted to fight. And every time I would integrate a piece of it through surrendering, another, the next piece would show up and the next piece would show up, until I was so physically exhausted that I had no fight left in me. None. And I was so oversensitized. They tried to move me. I was able to express to them that because they were drumming and they sing. And I was like, you got to stop drumming, stop singing, get the smells away from me. I need space. They tried to move me, but I couldn't move. My body was paralyzed. And it was a representation of the paralyzing of fear that we have in this world, and how nobody is willing to take the risk. Nobody's willing to feel it. Nobody's willing to go into it. And until I had no fight left. And I laid down, and they started to show me that everything here is inverted. Now, this is actually an awareness I channeled before in preparation for Salvation, that I'll be taking them deeper into. So I had this anytime I open a program, as soon as like the weeks prior to the first class, I'll start getting the downloads for the content that's going to come through. And I got this, that everything's inverted. And they use the example of when you take a selfie, you flip the camera. That's not how you really look. It's showing you the inversion of you. And I've kind of always known this because I've channeled it in multiple ways. Most people are afraid of spiders. Why? Spiders are small, right? No, they're not. We know our soul, our consciousness, our real, we access a part of us that knows the spiders are really gigantic. That butterflies and dragonflies were something that we could ride on. They're not that small, but those are friendly, right? They were friends to us. We fly on them. We do those kinds of things, where spiders were huge. They were gigantic. So we got to think about these things, right? Everything's inverted.
so above, so below. Everything's inverted. My teddy bear, I had my grief bear with me. It was about this big. It has a little voice box in it that, because, most of you guys know that my dad passed away early in his life. And so I heard my dad's voice, and has a picture of me and my dad on the front of the bear. They ask you to bring something that makes you feel safe. Well, that's something that and I had my blanket and my own pillow. I was holding my bear. My bear was bigger than me. I would grab my bear and roll over, and the thing was like bigger than me. It was so weird. When David and Gage, the facilitators, would come sit next to me because they were holding space for me while I was going through this extreme release of this rage and powerlessness for myself and the collective, they look like Avatar people. Like, if you've seen the movie Avatar, they didn't look galactic. They looked human, but they were 8 to 10 feet tall. They were huge. Again, everything's inverted. Think about small dogs. Why are they so freaking yappy? Because they're coming in to experience something as a small dog when normally maybe they're a big dog. And the big dog is used to being the little dog. That's why the big dog thinks it wants to sit on your lap. The same goes for our consciousness. We think that something in our mind or something that we're feeling is huge. No, we're making it huge. It's really not that huge. It's our perception. It's the lens of perception. You are always the writer and the reader. Always. Like, literally, you create your reality. Literally, we create our reality by the lens in which you see the world, by the lens of which you see anything. So all of this had to happen because I was getting ready to teach a course on that and how to integrate it. So I had to go through the experience because that's how I am. That's how I've been my whole life. Before I teach anything, I have to experience it. And while I've experienced it through my quantum embodiment technique, this was a whole nother level of experience. So I got to see how, I just kept seeing thing after thing and how it was inverted, and seeing the truth of what it really was and how we see it, right? Because again, so above, so below. It's kind of like if you guys are fans of Stranger Things, how they have that dark underworld and then it's a mirror. It's the same. It's the same in a dualistic plane, which is what Earth is in. It's a dualistic plane. It won't always be that way either, by the way. It'll actually eventually go into a unified plane, but not until we've learned what we needed to learn and stop fighting. And that was the big thing that came through towards the end, was my ego, and part of me was fighting this because it was so much. I cannot express to you how painful and how eye-opening the collective cycle is of repression. And it really showed me that I can't wake anybody up. I can't make them see anything. They have to be able to see it for themselves. I can show them the way, but until they choose to operate from the lens of the soul and see that there is no solid truth, everything is perspective, everything is a different angle, and get them to choose to stop fighting and see that someone else's opinion doesn't make them wrong, right? Until we choose to come together, this cycle is only going to get more intense, because that's what was happening to me. It was just getting more intense and more intense and more intense. And I was just going around and around the same shit, dressed a little bit differently. And we do this individually because we're each individually an aspect of the collective. And then we watch it play out on the world stage. Reality is created from the observer. So again, when you look out in the world, what you see is what will be. What you believe will be, even if you don't believe that seeing is believing or believing is seeing, because even that's a belief. When you think seeing is believing, that's a belief. You think believing is seeing, that's a belief, right? Inverted. I started to once I had that, so when they showed me that I don't have to fight anymore, it just hit me. Like, it was like when I couldn't fight anymore because I had drained every ounce of energy in me fighting, it was just there. It's like the smoke had cleared, and it just was like, you don't have to fight. If you want it to stop, stop. You just have to stop. That's it. There's nothing fancy. You just have to stop doing it. Just stop. Change your behavior. And when I stopped fighting it, it stopped. And I started to heal. I started to release the trauma that was in my body. I started convulsing and shivering. And I've actually had this experience several times. So when you do breath work, I forget, I think it's called tetany. Yeah, it's tetany. It's like, this is the gang sign for breath work, people. If you've ever done breath work, you know, this is the gang sign. Your body locks and it starts to shake really bad. And you can't move. Like, you're almost in paralysis while you're shaking. It's a trauma. That is physical trauma leaving your body. When I had surgery in the beginning of 2021, when I came out of surgery, I did that for 30 minutes. I couldn't stop convulsing and shivering. And they didn't know what was happening, but I knew. But I couldn't express it to them because I was in it. I was releasing it. And so they kept trying to warm me up, and they kept trying to tell me to calm down. And I couldn't, because my body was releasing the trauma from the surgery. So I had to release the trauma that was trapped in my body from me going and excavating that powerlessness and rage. So for about an hour and a half, if not longer, it was really intense. But I actually had a shiver in my mouth probably for most of the next day. But I laid there, and I talk about this in a lot of my courses and stuff. When you get bone cold, where you can't warm up, you're crystallizing. That means you've learned the lesson. That density has gone from this to a little tiny speck of crystal. And so it's the process of crystallizing. It's literally breaking the density, the fossilized energy, right? That's ascension, going from a dense being, going from density to crystalline. So that has to break up. And what's left, like, think about the pressure of a coal. Everything is a metaphor, by the way, in the world. Everything is a metaphor. Every fucking thing. There's nothing that is not a metaphor. So coal, right? Diamond is made from coal under pressure. That's a perfect metaphor for this, because the pressure is releasing. And as it does, it's crumbling the coal. And what's left is this little tiny diamond. And that's what was happening in my body. My body was crystallizing. That powerlessness, that rage. And so I was feeling that crystallizing happening in my body by shivering. And as it was releasing. You could feel the trauma coming off of me. I had zero energy. So we were done about 7, 8 in the morning. I don't even know, because they take away your phone, so you don't have any idea what time it is. There was a clock, but I couldn't see it properly. And when it was over, you go around and you share as much about your experiences as you want. And then we go outside and we get rid of our purging bags. I did see reptilians. I did see other beings. I did not converse with them. I was in the depth of healing. But they're just all around you, all the time. All kinds of different beings, right? And so we're not going to get into that today. But we dumped our purge buckets, and they took us outside, and I stripped down to just my sports bra and my leggings. You have to wear white or very light clothing. And they literally take these sacred leaves and they shed and cleanse your physical body. They anoint you. They do all of these things, these rituals to close out the ritual. And then most people go lay down. Like, they had fresh squeezed juice. I think it was carrot and mango and pineapple. I don't know, something like that. I couldn't even have any. I couldn't eat. I couldn't drink. I was in so much pain in my masculine from the right side of the top of my head all the way down to my jaw. It was just an excruciating pain from the amount of wounded masculine energy that I had cleared and moved through me. Literally, I moved like 100 Mack trucks of energy through my body. I could barely walk. So I went to lay down in my bed, and I started having flashbacks of the screaming and the begging for my life and going through it. But I was in a state of overwhelm. And when you're in a state of overwhelm, it's really hard to access your tools. It's really hard to access your tools. And so I just had to surrender to that, right? So eventually I was able to fall asleep. And about 4:00, they came in to get me and said, this is your last opportunity to eat if you're going to go into second ceremony. Because usually when you do this, you could do 2 or 3 ceremonies in a row. And again, everyone had different experiences. Each night they had a different experience. Every person in the room had a different experience. It's literally what you're meant to do. What's meant for you is what will be. Some people didn't experience anything, nothing. Some people had nothingness. They were just calm and still and purged. And some people had beautiful experiences. Every single person is going to get exactly what's meant for them. I had no energy. And you need energy to do these ceremonies. So in talking to the facilitator, he thought it was the best that I did not sit in day 2. So I didn't. I literally slept all day. I got up. They held space for me. They had facilitators who held space for me, who let me talk about what I experienced, to let me cry, to let me purge, and release the grief of that experience, of everything. It was intense. I drank the juice. I really could not eat. My body was digesting so much and breaking down so much. And I slept, and I just stayed in my bed all night. I listened to their ceremony on and off. And then, the next day we had other things that we did. I don't regret doing it. There's people that do it on repeat month after month or ceremony after ceremony. That's not something I will ever do. Personally, I think you need months to integrate what you experience through plant medicine ceremonies. I think you need months to put what you became aware of into action and integrate it, right? That, again, the acceptance is the first stage of integration. But unless you change the behavior, you just reinstall the virus. And so I'm facilitating the Solvation journey right now. And I was like, you know what? This once was enough right now. I'm just going to integrate what I know. I'm just going to apply what I learned into new behavior, into my life. And that's my recommendation for anyone that chooses to do Aya, is to do the ceremonies that you signed up to do. If you feel called to do more than one, because usually, again, they're 2 or 3. I did not take the 3rd cup. Some people took 4 cups. I couldn't even hear them announce the 3rd cup because I was so in it. But what I experienced was enough for me. I cleared and have an understanding of the world from a totally different perspective. I now know more than anything that this is all an illusion, that none of it is real except for my experience. So I better make it in a good experience. I better really choose what I want and go after it. It's my choice. Comfort is boring because you're not getting any experience. And I really understood more than I ever did before, because I've already embodied different aspects of me. I've embodied a lot of my inner children. I've embodied my 10th dimensional Andromedan self. I've embodied my 9th dimensional Pleiadian self. And these are lenses. These are versions of me that I can see through. So I don't really have much of a human perspective left as it is. But what I can tell you is that I am so much more appreciative of being physical, of being human, and choosing to see the world how it should be, right? Through the lens of the soul. It doesn't mean that the human part becomes much easier, but I just went through a week of some shitstorms. And while it was hard and it was uncomfortable, nothing will ever be as uncomfortable as that night. And I know that I don't have to do it. I don't have to fight with it. I don't have to fight with it anymore. I can literally realize all I have to do is stop and lean into it, and it will be over like that. I understand more than ever, I am you, you are me, that there's no separation. Your ego creates the separation through judgment. So overall, life altering, changing forever will change my life. I feel like I will end up doing it again one day, but it will be not anytime soon. And so that was my experience of Aya. I'm just going to look through the comments really fast for those who are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and these are recorded live. Appreciate our differences and come together where we agree and we all agree on peace and love. We don't even have to agree. I mean, we have to agree to just respect someone else's perspective. You know, something that I always say is this is truth. And Meredith's perspective might be looking at it from this angle, and I might be looking at it from this angle. And Shelley might be looking at it from this angle, and Corey might be looking at it from this angle. It just means that they're looking at it from a different lens. They have chosen to put on a different pair of glasses, and these glasses are colored by your own personal beliefs, by what you've repressed, by what you're holding. What's in your cup is what colors your lens. But at any time, you can choose to put on a different pair of lenses and look at it a different way. And so when you listen to somebody else's perspective, you can see that they're just looking at it from a different angle, and that's how it appears to them. That it's not wrong, it just appears differently to them, and that you're both right. And you don't have to prove that to that person. You don't even have to tell them that. You can just in your mind be like, that's how they see it through those glasses. And how cool is it that we see something so differently, but we're both right? You just stop fighting with people. You start trying to convince people of your way. Because how are they going to understand your way unless they see it for themselves, unless they walk through it? That's why, my mission really is to help people change their lenses, to integrate aspects of themselves so that they're no longer feeling so much separation and having so much struggle. It's what I do in my sessions. It's what I do in my courses. It's my goal is to bring you into balance, to enjoy the human experience, because it's a game. And I used to hear that. My guides would tell me that, and I'd be like, yeah, whatever. I need the cheat codes. It's a freaking game, you guys. It is a freaking game. That's it. I try to explain this with a game of telephone. One thing can be said one way, but the other end is not the same wording as the original. Well, people hear, again, they hear, see, experience through what's in their cup. It's their lens. Channels too. You ever look at how many channels talk about something so different? If they hold certain beliefs, what's being channeled is pure. Source is never wrong. But it's got to filter through all of these lenses, all of these layers. Think of a 7-layer dip, because that's just what I'm seeing right now. Or the layers of the earth, right? Same thing. It's got to move. That pure information has to move through all of those filters. And what you get at the end is probably a little bit altered from what it really is, depending on how somebody's ego is still attached. So they're going to hear it through that lens. They're going to see it through that lens. They're going to experience it through that lens. And so we can recognize that when people are a certain way, or that when they believe a certain thing, you can just recognize, well, that's what their programming is, and that's what they're choosing to keep as their programming. Energy can't be created or destroyed. It can only change form. So you have to replace the programming. It has to be replaced. It has to be put into action. There's no other way around it. It's through experience that we learn. Learning, listening, reading, it's all great, but it's useless until you put it into play. Where did I do this? I actually did this in Texas, where I am now. If you look up Magical it's magical, Maegical, I believe, Heals. They're in Texas. They have domestic retreats, which is what I did, but they also do retreats in other countries. And it's David and Megan are the facilitators, their husband and wife, and I highly recommend them. I used to think I had to do this with Ashley or with my other friend. I felt I needed to have someone I was safe with, that I knew with me. And when I started microdosing, it was about a month later that I found him. And I instantly had this resonance that I had known him for many, many lifetimes. And even though he was a male, I felt completely safe with him. And I couldn't explain it. I just knew. And the stars aligned and everything worked out. And the retreat that I chose, the amount it cost, the dates, everything worked out perfectly. And I have never in my life experienced a man holding space for me who was balanced in his masculine and feminine the way that I did with David. Never. And I'll never forget it. I now know what it looks like and what it feels like to be with somebody who is that secure in them. They're not no longer in their anxious attachment or disorganized attachment or avoidant attachment. They are secure. He's returned to himself. And that was very, very important for my stability, because when you're holding space for somebody, you are their anchor. You're not fixing it. You're not directing it. You're just anchoring them. I did it, his retreat, domestic retreat. I got to watch the time because I have a session in just a few minutes. So I got to wrap this up. But we did it at his home in Texas. But again, he's done it at different locations. If I will, Joystar 33. I just followed you. If you want to make sure you follow me back. If you want to message me, I will connect you with him, because I think he has actually openings. He's doing 2 more domestic retreats this year, and he might have 1 or 2 spots left if you want to check him out. He's on TikTok too. So I just followed you. If you want to message me, I can connect you to him. Yeah, I love herbs. Yes, you're absolutely right. Herbs, all of that stuff is super healing. And again, I don't believe you have to do this. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter if you're in New Jersey. You can fly in, they'll pick you up from the airport and everything. You don't have to do this to have these experiences. And it's actually my goal to start creating retreats where we go this deep without plant medicine, because I don't necessarily think you have to have plant medicine to do it. And I think some people aren't ready for plant medicine. But I do know that through my other retreats that I have allowed people to experience what it means to be connected, the same way that trees are connected. And so that's something that's coming for me. Is I've done retreats in the past, and obviously, the vid kind of cut that down, but it's coming back. And these are not going to be cheap retreats, but they're going to be worth it, because you're going to leave a different person. And so it's coming. And I won't be alone in it. I've already talked to a couple of people who are going to join in with me. So it's something that is in the works. And eventually you guys will learn more about it. But for now, we're going to close this out. And I appreciate you guys holding space for me and listening to my experience with this sacred, very healing plant medicine. And hopefully you took away some wisdom from what I shared, and maybe can start applying some of this to your own life, and hold this in your resonance. Vicky, when we see each other, I will give you his information. I'll connect you, or before that, I'll connect you. Highly recommend. But I love you guys. You can listen to the replay on Apple Podcast or Spotify, or check it out on YouTube. So I will see you guys next time. Bye for now.